What if the real reason your mind feels exhausted, scattered, or numb isn't because you're broken, but because you've been living in the wrong places? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in modern psychology, believed that your environment shapes your unconscious far more than you realize. And I'm not just talking about physical locations. I'm talking about emotional traps, invisible spaces, mental environments that quietly weaken your thinking, poison your growth, and drain your inner strength. In this video, we're going to explore 7 places Carl Jung warned us to avoid if we want a mind that's not just smart, but powerful, clear, and deeply alive. These places aren't obvious. Some of them look like comfort, some sound like logic, some even feel like home. But each one contains a hidden cost. So if you've ever felt stuck, lost, or like your potential is slipping through your fingers, stay with me. Because once you recognize these environments, you'll begin to reclaim your power, one insight at a time. And trust me, the 7th one? It might just change how you see your entire life. Imagine walking into a room where everyone agrees with you. Every idea you share is praised. Every opinion met with nods and smiles. Sounds like paradise, right? But Jung would warn you, that kind of paradise is a mental graveyard. Environments where no one disagrees, where the confrontation of ideas is avoided like poison, are in fact, tombs for the mind. The intellect needs friction to grow, just as a muscle needs resistance to become stronger. A room full of people echoing your beliefs doesn't sharpen anything. It just inflates the ego and dulls the spirit. Have you ever noticed how very smart people can become dogmatic when they live only among equals? Carl Jung would understand this as a collapse of individuation, the process through which we become who we truly are. If you only hear what reinforces your beliefs, you'll never be challenged to see yourself with new eyes. And without self-confrontation, there is no self-discovery. A strong mind is like a polished mirror. It reflects clearly, even when the image is unpleasant. In an echo chamber, that mirror is coated with comforting filters that distort everything so as not to offend you. This kind of place doesn't have to be physical. It can be a WhatsApp group, a subreddit, or a circle of friends who mock any new idea. The sense of belonging is seductive, and leaving that feels like betrayal. But think about it. If everyone around you thinks the same way, someone stop thinking. Jung believed that engaging with the different, the contradictory, even the offensive, is how we meet the parts of ourselves we haven't yet integrated. Avoiding them is avoiding yourself. Now here's the subtle twist. True intellectual courage isn't about defending your ideas, but being willing to let them die when necessary. Places where this is possible are fertile for the soul. The others? Just distorted mirrors of your fear to evolve. And hidden deep inside that fear lies the next danger, a place you may already be living in without even realizing. There's a prison most people carry inside their heads, and the worst part is, it has no visible bars. This prison is made of painful memories that still command the choices of today. Carl Jung understood trauma not just as a single event, but as a living psychological complex, an emotional knot that keeps operating behind the curtain. You might be out having dinner with friends or signing an important contract. And still, it's the pain from 10 years ago calling the shots. This prison is quiet, but it works. You avoid new opportunities because last time didn't end well. You push away healthy relationships because you got used to chaos. Worse still, you call it instinct or intuition, when in reality, it's just the past wearing a wise disguise. Jung would say this is the unconscious sabotaging you, trying to protect you, but keeping you stuck. It's like part of you froze in time while the rest pretends it moved on. A practical example? Someone who was betrayed once and now interprets every act of kindness as manipulation. Or someone who grew up hearing they weren't good enough, and today refuses to try, even when they're fully capable. These emotional places of the past act like ghosts. They no longer live, but they still haunt. And the more you avoid or hide them, the more power they gain. Jung called this repressed content, and a strong mind can only exist when you have the courage to face those shadows. Here's the truth. We all have our inner prisons. The problem isn't having them, it's decorating the walls and calling it home. Over time, they stop feeling like prisons, and start feeling like safety. But there's another place, just as dangerous, where everything is easy, pleasurable, and shallow. And it's in that terrain that many bright minds begin to decay, without ever noticing. There's a kind of place that feels amazing in the moment, but leaves your soul starving in the long run. Jung would call it a psychological dead end. It's the realm of shallow pleasures, where instant gratification reigns and depth is treated like a burden. Think social feeds, gossip circles, compulsive shopping, or relationships built solely on validation. These places aren't inherently evil, but they're addictive. And addiction doesn't require substances. Sometimes all it takes is endless scrolling and a fear of being alone with your thoughts. The danger isn't the pleasure itself. It's what that pleasure replaces. In Jungian terms, shallow environments pull you away from individuation, your deepest inner growth, by numbing your capacity for discomfort. The dopamine hits become a substitute for meaning. And before you know it, weeks, or years, have passed. You've been busy but unfulfilled, constantly stimulated but spiritually hollow. A strong mind doesn't just seek pleasure. It seeks alignment. And shallow pleasures pull you off course with velvet chains. Let's bring it closer to home. Ever binge-watch a show and feel strangely empty after? Or jump between meaningless chats just to avoid silence? That silence you're avoiding may be the very space where your real self is trying to speak. Jung believed that indulging in shallow pleasures too often is a form of psychic escape. You're running from your shadow, your questions, your truth. Pleasure becomes not celebration, but distraction. And that's when it starts to do damage. Here's the quiet tragedy. The more time you spend in these shallow spaces, the harder it becomes to crave anything deeper. The mind forgets how to sit with complexity, how to wrestle with meaning. And just around the corner from this sugar-coated numbness lies a much darker space, one where people stop avoiding their pain and start throwing it onto others. There's a special kind of danger that hides in plain sight, not in dark alleys or toxic relationships, but in groups that seem passionate, even righteous. Jung warned us about this. When people avoid facing their own inner darkness, they start projecting it onto others. It's the unconscious game of it's not me, it's them. And when that projection becomes collective, you get mobs, cliques, online takedowns, even entire belief systems built on blame. These groups feel powerful, but they feed on denial, and denial weakens everyone involved. The thing is, projection feels good. It relieves the tension of confronting our flaws by making someone else carry them. You see it in people who always find a scapegoat, who can sniff out toxicity in others but never turn inward. According to Jung, this is a disconnection from the shadow, the hidden, uncomfortable parts of the self. In a group where everyone points fingers but no one looks in the mirror, there is no growth, only hiding, in plain sight, with company. Let's say you're part of a workplace where negativity spreads like wildfire. One person makes a mistake, and suddenly the whole team turns on them. Or maybe you're in a friend group where venting crosses the line into quiet character assassination. That's not emotional honesty, it's projection. It's unprocessed pain disguised as insight. But a strong mind doesn't outsource pain. It sits with it. It learns from it. It integrates it. And here's where it gets trickier. These groups often wear the mask of virtue, justice, truth, protection. But look deeper and you'll find raw, unexamined pain calling the shots. If you stay too long, you might start wearing that pain too, thinking it's yours, when it's not. And once that mask is on, you're one step closer to entering a world where everyone wears one. Ever walk into a room and feel like no one's really there? Not because it's empty, but because everyone's playing a part. Jung would call this persona inflation, where people become so attached to their social masks that they forget there's a real face underneath. These places are everywhere. Corporate offices, dinner parties, even spiritual retreats. They're environments where image is everything, and authenticity is treated like a liability. You smile, you nod, you network, and yet, something inside you quietly suffocates. The danger of false personas isn't just that others wear them, it's that you start wearing yours too long. At first, it's subtle. You adjust your opinions to fit the room. You exaggerate your confidence. You pretend not to care so you won't seem too much. Jung warned that the persona is necessary. It helps us function in society, but when it replaces the self, the soul begins to shrink. You become a projection, not a person, and the world rewards you for it. Because surface sells. Let me give you a real-world example. Think of someone who's the life of every party but feels completely empty when alone. Or the overachiever who can't stop working because rest would expose the truth, that they have no idea who they are without applause. These personas aren't evil, they were built to protect us. But when you confuse the mask with your face, you lose access to your depth, your uniqueness, your truth. A strong mind isn't built on applause. It's built on wholeness. But here's the haunting part. The more you wear the mask, the more others expect you to keep it on. You become trapped in the role you created. And if you dare to take it off, let's just say the room gets real quiet. Which is exactly why the next place is so seductive. It offers safety through control. But what it really delivers is psychological imprisonment. There's a kind of space that looks structured, efficient, even impressive, but underneath, it's driven by fear. Jung would call this the domain of the overcontrolled psyche. It's where vulnerability is seen as weakness, unpredictability is the enemy, and control is the silent god everyone worships. Whether it's a hyper-competitive workplace, a rigid household, or even your own inner world, the obsession with control always comes with a price. It kills spontaneity, silences emotion, and slowly eats away at the human spirit. The people in these places often look like they've got it all together. They plan, they execute, they dominate. But Jung saw this as compensation, the ego suppressing chaos instead of integrating it. The irony? The more you control, the more you fear losing it. And that fear becomes the invisible driver of your life. You stop experimenting. You avoid relationships that feel messy. You micromanage everything to avoid pain. But in doing so, you also block growth. A strong mind isn't afraid to surrender. It knows when to steer, and when to let go. Ever known someone who can't relax unless every detail is perfect? Or who turns every conversation into a debate to avoid emotional honesty? That's not strength. That's fragility in armor. Jung would say this person is disconnected from their unconscious, terrified of what's inside. Control is just a mask for chaos. But the chaos doesn't vanish, it waits. And when the mask finally cracks, it explodes. And that's the terrifying twist. The more tightly you control your world, the more violently it collapses when something slips. One mistake, one emotion, one loss, and the whole illusion shatters. That's when people spiral. Because they never learned how to feel without judgment. Which leads us to the final, and perhaps most dangerous, place of all, where control is long gone, and meaning itself has disappeared. This is the most dangerous place of all, not because it screams, but because it whispers nothing. Jung would call it the psychic wasteland, a space where meaning is stripped away, where purpose is mocked, and where nothing feels worth caring about. It's not loud like trauma, or intense like obsession, it's just numb. You go through the motions. You wake up, work, scroll, sleep, and somewhere between all that, your soul quietly withers. The tragedy? Most people don't even realize they're in it. In this wasteland, everything becomes ironic, detached, performative. Depth is labeled dramatic. Dreams are dismissed as naive. You're told to not take life so seriously. But behind that smile is silent apathy. Jung believed the human spirit cannot survive without meaning. When purpose dies, neurosis begins. And in places where meaning has vanished, addiction, cynicism, and quiet despair grow roots. These aren't just moods, they're symptoms of spiritual starvation. Think about environments where people brag about not caring, where sarcasm replaces sincerity, where the only goals are to get by, get likes, or get paid. There's no fire, no why, just routines wrapped in fake smiles. Jung would say this is the shadow of a society that's disconnected from the soul. And the mind? It becomes restless, confused, and disoriented. Because without meaning, the psyche floats, unanchored and unprotected. But here's the paradox. Sometimes it's in this very wasteland, in the dead silence of the soul, that a new voice can finally emerge. A whisper from deep within, calling you back. If you're brave enough to listen, everything can change. But if you ignore it, even your strongest parts will begin to fade. And now that you've seen these 7 dangerous places, the real question is, what will you do with that awareness? You've seen the 7. The echo chamber, the trauma prison, the shallow thrill ride, the shadow-throwing crowd, the performance hall, the temple of control, and the wasteland of nothingness. And here's the thing. We've all lived in at least one of them. But Jung didn't believe in staying stuck. He believed in becoming, in using awareness as a doorway to transformation. Now that you know where not to go, the question becomes, where will you go? What parts of your environment need to shift? Which masks are you ready to remove? What comfortable patterns are actually weakening you? A strong mind isn't built overnight. It's forged by choosing differently, again and again, especially when no one's watching. So if this video opened your eyes even a little, consider subscribing and hitting the bell, not just to support the channel, but to keep exploring what it really means to think freely, feel deeply, and live truthfully. Because if you're watching this, you're probably already tired of the surface. And this is just the beginning.